Hello and welcome to Alyssa Jean's Reviews, and welcome to my top 10 best TV shows of the year for 2025. So I'm going to start off with a couple of rules real quick, and then I'm going to show you my entire top 23. I've watched 23 shows in 2025. So I'm going to show you 23 through 11, actually. Will run across your screen. Then I'll do a couple honorable mentions, and then we will get into the actual top 10. If you want to jump straight to the top 10, or you want to jump to any part of this, you can do so with the timestamps in the description below. Also, I am going to attempt to keep this mostly spoiler free so that if you haven't seen the show that I'm talking about, you won't be spoiled on any major plot points. However, there may be a couple instances where I do need to talk about spoilers, in which case I will tell you I'm talking about spoilers and then give you a timestamp to jump to skip the spoilers. Okay, so the rule, as usual, is that the show must end its season in 2025. Doesn't matter when it started. So, for example, Star Wars Skeleton Crew began its season 1 in 2024, but it did not finish until January 2025, and therefore it did not qualify for last year's countdown in 2024. So this year it is under consideration for 2025 because it ended in 2025. Under consideration, it didn't make my top 10. Spoiler. Okay. And then we have on the other end of that Fallout Season 2, which just started at the very end of 2025, but will not complete its season until 2026. So it would be considered for 2026 if I should come back and do a 2026 top 10. I don't know if I will. As some of you know, I am ending my channel, but I could still come back and do a top 10. We'll see. We'll see. But in any case, Fallout will not qualify for 2025. Okay, so let me go ahead now and run the numbers 23 through 11 across your screen. In parentheses will be my rating out of 10 for each of those shows. Here you go. Let's get into some honorable mentions now that you've seen my 23 through 11. I'm going to talk about 3 of those shows that you just saw, and not necessarily like 11, 12, and 13. These are going to be shows that I have never talked about on my channel that I would like to talk about. So we're actually going to start with the show that finished all the way back at number 19. So it's not even, I don't know if you can call it honorable, really. But I've never talked about this show on this channel, so I would like to. So first honorable mention is Wednesday, season 2. Wednesday is one of many, many, many shows that appear in this top 23 that I did not watch it when it originally aired or originally started streaming. I went back and watched the season 1 later and then watched the season from this year. There's a lot of, I feel like most of the shows in this list are like that. But I was hesitant to watch season 1 for a long time. I thought it looked dumb. I was never an Addams Family fan, but I finally watched it, and it was a fun show. Good characters, good chemistry between the characters. Interesting storyline. Even you've got to be able to suspend some disbelief and accept that it's a silly Addams Family type romp. But if you're able to do that, season 1 was a lot of fun. Season 2 was still a little bit of fun, but did not have the cohesive story that season 1 had. It was kind of all over the place. Season 2 didn't seem to know who the villain was for this season. They were like, this person's the villain. Just kidding, this person's the villain. Just kidding, the original person is the villain again. No, they're not. It's this person. Actually, it's the first one we said was the villain is the villain. It's like, what is going on? There was just all these different plots happening that seemed unrelated, and I didn't like, it was making me dizzy. So season 2, unfortunately, not as well written as season 1, although still some great acting in it, but it's not quite up there. But I did want to talk about it as an honorable mention because I've never talked about Wednesday before. Next honorable mention is another show that I have not talked about on this channel before, although I did write a little bit about it on Alyssa Jean's Facebook page. And it is yet another show that I did not watch when it originally aired, and that is White Lotus Season 3. The White Lotus, an HBO show, of course. For those of you not familiar with it, it's an anthology show. Each season takes place in a different location of the White Lotus Resort franchise. So season 1 was Hawaii, season 2 was in Sicily, and season 3 was in Thailand. And each show has mostly a different cast. There's a couple characters who have slipped from one season to another, but for the most part, it's a different cast every year. It's usually actors that you would probably recognize. Season 3 arguably had one of the best casts. Had Jason Isaacs, Carrie Coon, Walton Goggins, Parker Posey, really great cast. And season 3 up through the penultimate episode was my favorite episode, or my favorite season. All they needed to do was stick the landing. If they could have stuck the landing, I think season 3 would have been my favorite season of The White Lotus. But after the finale, yeah, season 2 is still my favorite season. That's the season that had Aubrey Plaza and Theo James in it. That's still my favorite season, I think. But it didn't have the emotional payoff that I had hoped for. Yeah, it was a little disappointing. I can't say more without going into spoilers, and it's just an honorable mention, so I don't want to get too much into it. But I just didn't get the emotional satisfaction from the finale that I would have liked to have gotten. So it still made my top my top 15. It came in at number 15, but dropped down from a 9 out of 10 rating, which I would have given it, down to an 8 out of 10 rating, and it falls out of my top 10, but I still wanted to mention it here. Now, my last honorable mention is a true honorable mention. It is my number 11, and until Stranger Things came along on New Year's Eve, it was in my top 10. Stranger Things knocked it right on out of my top 10, and with an 8.5 out of 10 rating. That's pretty impressive. 8.5 out of 10, and didn't make my top 10, and that is Silo Season 2. Yet another show that I did not watch when it originally aired. In fact, I watched seasons 1 and 2 consecutively back in January of 2025. I believe actually Silo Season 2 is another one that began in 2024, but I didn't actually watch it then. So I watched season 1 at the beginning of 2025 and then watched season 2. And I'm one of the few people, I think, who are fans of this show who actually did like season 2 better. I thought season 1, the first half of it, was boring, and I just wasn't into it at all, and didn't understand why people thought it was a good show. And then it got good toward the end. Where season 2, I thought, expanded the universe a little bit more. I know people were complaining that the main character was separated from the rest of the characters. Slight spoiler. But I loved expanding and getting to know all these characters who had been minor characters in the previous season. So I really liked season 2 of Silo. Silo, of course, Apple Plus TV show that takes place in this post-apocalyptic world where everybody lives in a silo underneath the surface. Anyway, so Silo with an 8.5 out of 10 is my next honorable mention. And now, finally, we can go ahead and get into my top 10 proper. All right, now we can get into my top 10. We start with my number 10, which I gave an 8.5 out of 10 rating to as well. Both my number 10 and my number 9 have that rating. So my number 10 with an 8.5 out of 10 rating is The Wheel of Time Season 3. Now, I've already talked about this show in my awards video. I gave this the most underrated show of the year for the second consecutive time because I gave season 2 that award as well. I just think this show never got the recognition it deserved, and then it got canceled. And even I was underrating it as I was watching it because it was going on at the same time as like Yellow Jackets uh, and I think Black Mirror might have been on at that same time, and Severance. So I would often forget about it, but then when I watch it, I'm like, wow, this is amazing. Like I think they're finally really developing the characters, really settling into the story. The show is really hitting its stride, and then it gets canceled. So it's a shame. Still some great books that you should read if you haven't already. Um, yeah, so The Wheel of Time, my underrated show of the year, is also my number 10 show of 2025. Okay, now we move on to my number 9, also with an 8.5 out of 10 rating, and that is Peacemaker Season 2. And this is another show. It's kind of this is kind of be a theme in this top 10. Going back to what I said about White Lotus, is where it was a 9 out of 10 going into the finale, and then the finale dropped down to an 8. Here, I was thinking before the finale, 9.5, probably 10. This is probably going to be a top 2 show for me for the year. But then the finale happened, and then it drops down to an 8.5 rating. Still makes my top 10, though, at number 9. Now, The Peacemaker is yet another show that I did not watch when it originally aired. And I didn't watch this one because at the time it was a DCEU show, and DCEU was a dying franchise, and I didn't care about it. I'm like, why am I going to watch this show? And it was a sequel to a movie that I didn't think was that great, which was the Suicide Squad movie by James Gunn. So I never watched it, even though everyone said it was the greatest thing ever. I didn't watch it until I saw Superman this summer and realized that they were switching Peacemaker over to the DCU. So I decided to give it a shot, and I went back and watched season 1 after I saw the Superman film, and I thought it was great. Really great character development. At the end of season 2, I actually think that Chris Smith, who is the Peacemaker character, is DC's Loki. Like he's got that kind of incredible redemption arc, like Loki did on the MCU Disney Plus series. Um, but anyway, I thought season 1 was great. So go ahead and watch season 2. And I was wondering, isn't it going to be hard to move an entire show from one universe to the other? But actually, it was super easy, barely an inconvenience. All they did was just did this retconned previously on sequence where they showed any scene that mentioned or showed the Justice League. Like there's a kind of a Justice League cameo at the end where most of them are in shadows. But any scene that mentioned the Justice League or showed the Justice League, they edited it out and made it Justice Gang, and now it's the DCU. That works. Like I was totally okay with that. Now, season 2 continues the Peacemaker's journey toward redemption, and it's a really, really interesting story for him. Without getting into spoilers, he wants to, have this idealized life. He finds this other universe that he thinks might be that. And even though I think everybody and their mother and grandmother could see the twist coming from 1,000 gazillion miles away, it doesn't make it any less powerful. Very, very strong social commentary. I wish I could go into more spoilers, but I don't want to take the time out to go deeply into the spoilers on this one. I actually did do a live discussion on D's reviews earlier last year with Darren and Rob. So if you want my more specific thoughts, you can watch that. But I thought that the social commentary here was incredible. I thought the character development was incredible. And again, we get to the finale, and you've heard the phrase "could have been an email." I think the finale could have been a post-credit scene. Like anything that mattered could have been a post-credit scene. The finale did two things. One, it set up for future DCU projects, specifically, supposedly, Superman Man of Tomorrow, which is coming in 2027. It's going to feed directly into that. And it had a lot of exposition scenes that they're going to have to do again. They're going to have to do all that exposition again, because not everyone who watches Superman is also watching Peacemaker. Superman has a much wider audience. Superman is more family friendly. There's going to be more kids watching it. Peacemaker had a giant orgy scene in episode 1. Like, it's not for kids. So there's going to be a lot of people who don't watch Peacemaker, who watch Superman Man of Tomorrow. So you're going to have to do all that exposition all over again anyways. So why do you have a whole episode about that? And then the other thing that they had in that episode was, like, I think 4 or 5 montages. Some of those with James Gunn's really objectively shitty taste in music. And it's funny, you watch his podcast or whatever, like, he thinks he has this sophisticated taste in music. His taste in music is objectively shitty. Like, his big thing was having Nelson. You know Nelson is still around? Fucking Nelson. Like, it was like a 5-minute montage of Nelson doing a live act. I'm sorry, but that sucked. And then they had Foxy Shazam, which is a band that did do the theme song for season 2, and I did like it, but then they had them, like, play live, and I was like, God, this guy desperately wants to be Freddie Mercury, like, desperately wishes he could be Freddie Mercury. And I'm like, why? It's like 5 minutes long. Like, why am I wasting that? So Peacemaker season 2 went from a potential 10 out of 10, and, like, I think it was going to be number 2 in my top 10 at the time, down to, to the tail end of my top 10 at number 9. But it still makes it still pretty good up until that unfortunate finale. So Peacemaker season 2 with an 8.5 rating is at number 9 in my top 10. All right, now we're up to number 8 for 2025, and now we're moving into my 9 out of 10 ratings. So numbers 8, 7, 6, and 5 all have 9 out of 10 ratings. Number 4 and number 3 are 9.5 out of 10 ratings, and number 2 and 1 are 10 out of 10 ratings. The first time, actually, in a long time that I've had more than one 10 out of 10 rating. Anyways, we're talking about number 8 here, and that is Task from HBO Max. This is presumably a limited series, although I definitely have heard calls for making this into an anthology series, a la The White Lotus, where you have a different cast every year. But I don't know if they're going to do that. But the premise was not that interesting. It is definitely the character stories. Oh my God, the writing in this is phenomenal. And also the acting as well. Of course, the most well-known actor in here is Mark Ruffalo, and he puts on an incredible performance. But there are other great performances too. And even though the story, it's an FBI task force, blah blah blah. They're staking out some, robbers or blah 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 blah. But it's the character introspection that is just really interesting. And the other thing I really love about this is that there are not really any, well, I won't say any, but there's not a lot of, like, true villains. I mean, there's a couple people in there you could probably peg as, okay, they're definitely a bad guy. But there's a lot of shades of gray in this show. Our hero, Mark Ruffalo, has a lot of demons himself that he struggles with, and that's kind of a really interesting side plot, his whole family dynamic and all that stuff. And the character who is initially set up as potentially a bad guy, maybe not such a bad guy, but kind of is. It's more about exploring these characters and seeing them as full human beings, like fully developed human characters. And that's what I think really makes this show great. For me, the finale, not like Peacemaker, where it kind of really brought it down, but I think I went into the finale thinking it was a 9, and it stayed a 9. It didn't drop down, but I also thought it could have been a 10. Finale was a bit of an epilogue, like just kind of a tack on. But it did have some like emotionally fulfilling scenes. I don't think the entire thing was emotionally fulfilling, but like it did have enough that the finale was, I'll say, good enough to keep this show still out at a 9 out of 10. And it lands at number 8 in my top 10 for 2025. All right, and now we've moved up to number 7 for 2025. And this is also a 9 out of 10 rating. And it is the first of 2 consecutive shows that I'm going to talk about, which were very divisive this year, where you will find a bunch of videos on YouTube saying, this sucked. But you'll also find videos on YouTube that liked it. And in this case, it's divisive between me and my sibling, as they had a different opinion of it than I did. So my number 7 with a 9 out of 10 rating is Squid Game Season 3. I mean, I can kind of see the complaints about this. I mean, I get it. They're not coming from nowhere. But I loved it. Like, I thought it was an emotionally satisfying ending. And I thought it kind of got back to its roots a little bit from season 1. I didn't think season 2 really had any gut-punching scenes the way that season 1 did. Season 3 absolutely did. I can't remember which episode that was because it's so long ago now. But the trans character, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking about. Like that. Oh my gosh. Like, oh my gosh. Yeah, some gut punches in this season, and some really interesting character development, especially for the front man, and just kind of seeing where he's coming from, getting into him a little bit like the villain of the show, and yeah, I thought this was a really great season of finale, or series finale rather. It does look like they're setting up for the American spinoff, which I don't know how I feel about that, but I thought just this show in itself, that was a great way to end the show. I would say that season 3 would be my second favorite behind season 1. Season 2 wasn't bad, but I definitely like season 3 better. And so that's Squid Game at number 7, and now we can move on to number 6. All right, we're at number 6, and this is another show that you can look on YouTube and see all these videos going, oh, that was dumb, that sucked, and a lot of complaints about it. Although I have also seen other people like myself who did love this final season, and that is Stranger Things Season 5, with a 9 out of 10 rating from me. And this time my sibling Mark and I are on the same page. I think we both loved this season and don't really agree with all the hate that it's getting. And in fact, this kind of Stranger Things kind of makes me think of Westworld, and that I'm the opposite of everyone else, where I like think it got better as it went on. Like, I think Westworld season 1 is overrated, and I think I used to actually say up through season 3 that Stranger Things is a vastly overrated show. Seasons 4 and 5, I think, are the best seasons of it, and season 5 even better, because season 4 had its issues, like the whole Russian thing, like that was a waste of time. And the first 2 episodes when they were in school in California, that was a waste of time. But season 4 had some really incredible revelations. But season 5 didn't have all the bullshit. I really don't understand what people are complaining about. I'm actually doing a whole discussion video with my sibling Mark. So check that out over on Enchantment of Eternity. That Monday, January 5th at 6 p.m. West Coast time. You can watch us complain about all the haters for the show. I honestly think season 5 was the best season of the show. I just think it was vastly overrated for the first 2 seasons. The first 2 seasons were like 80s nostalgia. I think the pitch meeting actually for Stranger Things is like, hey, you remember the 80s? Like, like 80s nostalgia? Yeah, let's do that. Like that's all it was. Where I think the later seasons actually get into meaningful and emotional character stories. Um, Now this is one where I do need to get into some spoilers. I cannot talk about this season without getting into spoilers. So I'm going to go ahead and put the timestamp on the screen now of where you can fast forward to avoid spoilers if you need to. And now I'm getting into spoilers right now. So I don't care what anyone else fucking says. Fuck all you homophobes. But the Will coming out scene, it was the greatest coming out scene in the history of TV, or at least that I have ever seen, because it was a long time coming and it was emotional. And it ties into the story. Like it's something that Will had to do in order to be ready to take on Vecna. Like he had to get past this hump because Vecna was using that against him. I thought it was brilliantly done. Um, and um, and people who maybe aren't homophobes who say stuff like who don't like the scene are like, oh, we already knew he was gay, so why is it a big deal? I'm gonna give you a lighter fuck you. Like the homophobes get a big fuck you, but for those who say it wasn't a good scene or oh, we already knew he was gay, when you're not homophobes necessarily, you just didn't like the scene. You're clearly straight. You clearly have no idea what it feels like to have to come out to people. So maybe you just don't get it. But if you have any empathy for someone having to come out and make that like, you should be crying. Like it was the most emotional scene I've seen in a long time. I was actually watching it with Mark. I was like bawling. So great scene for that character. And I love that they finally give Will not only give him something to do, but make him a main character. I really loved that about season 5. Now, this is another one that kind of falls a little bit short in the finale, although I think the finale would have been a fantastic series finale if it had ended about 45 minutes earlier. Like, I didn't need 45 minutes of epilogue. If you needed to do epilogue at all, like, I could maybe see doing, like, just a bit of the scene with Mike and everybody doing Dungeons and Dragons, and then Mike goes up the stairs and Holly comes down, and their kid, like, showing that transition. You could do that if you must do some epilogue scene. But the scene with all the older kids sitting around on the roof drinking, like, that reminded me of a scene that you would see like on a DVD as a deleted scene outtake, and you'd watch it and say, oh yeah, obviously I can see why they deleted it, because it did not need to be there at all. Hopper and Joyce going to dinner at whatever, Esno's or whatever, the place they talked about in previous season. I fast forwarded through it. Like, I fast forwarded through it. It just didn't, it was bored with it. Not necessary. And then the whole thing, I was bothered by the whole thing with like making, ooh, we're going to make it ambiguous if Eleven is dead or not. Just kill her. Hopper gives Mike a good speech, and now this is unnecessary too, but they did include it. He gives Mike a speech about accepting Eleven's death, which is good advice. That's how you grieve. You have to accept. This part of the grieving process is acceptance. But Mike says, "Fuck that! I'm not going to actually grieve properly. I'm going to like make up this story that she's still alive." And then the writers, the Duffer Brothers, want us to think that maybe she is still alive. They want it to be ambiguous. They're trying to be cutesy. Just kill her. Just kill her. Now we've got this message. Hey, kids, you don't have to accept that. Just make up a story they're still alive, and everything will be fine. Like, what kind of message is that? Like, it undercuts that whole Hopper scene. So I don't know. I did not care for any of that. So I did have to get that out of my system. However, now we can returning now to non-spoiler territory. Stranger Things is still an overall great season, very underrated season. It does not deserve the hate. It got a 9 out of 10 rating from me and lands it at number 6 in my top 10 for 2025. All right, now we're moving up to my number 5, which also had a 9 out of 10 rating from me, and that is Yellow Jackets Season 3. Yellow Jackets Season 2 was my most overrated show of the year, and Yellow Jackets Season 3 very nearly won the most pleasantly surprising show of the year. However, I gave that to Marvel Zombies because the bar for Marvel Zombies was, for me, was set so very low that for it to actually be a pretty decent show, it automatically got that award. But Yellow Jackets finally came out with a season that I wanted to see. Like, this is the show that I think that it should have been from the beginning. They're not holding back anymore. Like, they're just like, let's just go crazy. Let's just do like Breaking Bad crazy ass fucking shit. Which I feel like the show was holding back a little bit. I think that there's one certain character. So if you don't know the show, it takes place in two different time periods. Like, it's covering the 90s and the present day. And some of the characters are the same, played by different actors. There was one particular character, if you've watched the show, her name starts with an SH, that I think they finally just went all out, made her an all out villain. Like, this is just the villain. Like, she just totally lost her mind. She's totally crazy in both timelines. And I think they were trying to get you to empathize with her too much in season 2, and it's just like, yeah, but she's actually a pretty shitty person. So I like that they finally just admitted that and went all out. I found the character stories way more interesting in season 3 than previously. Before, I was engaged. Like, there were some episodes where I was just, this is like, I think episode 6 onward, every episode was like phenomenal. So I thought this was an incredible season of television. Definitely better than the previous 2 seasons. I think season 2 lagged in the present day storyline, was a little season 1 didn't go far enough for my taste in the craziness. Season 3 finally delivered the show that I had been expecting from the beginning. So loved Yellow Jackets season 3 and really can't wait for season 4. So Yellow Jackets season 3 is at number 5 on my top 10. All right, now we move up to my number 4, and we're moving up to 2 consecutive shows that have a 9.5 rating out of 10. Very rare 9.5. I don't usually give that rating out, but for a while, actually, these next 2 shows, number 4 and number 3, had a 9 rating, but then I really wanted to distinguish these 2 from everything else. And so I bumped them up to a 9.5 because I do think they're slightly better than all those 9s I just talked about. And so let's get into my number 4, which is Star Wars Andor season 2. With a 9.5 out of 10 rating, really redeeming itself from what I felt was a vastly overrated season 1. I think season 1 had too much going on, too many characters, too many storylines, and just couldn't get to the damn point. And like, I just didn't think season 1 was as great as everyone else made it out to be. Whereas season 2 does get to the point. We actually do care about the characters. Season 1, that dude, I always call him the guy with the blue milk. Like, I just thought he was a pointless character. Or season 1, rather, I'm talking about. In season 2, he makes more sense here. And then, of course, episode 8, I think, is probably, I would rank it among the best episodes of the year. There's going to be one in my number 1 show of the year that I would pick one that would be also in that category, but I think episode 8, which is the big reveal episode. It's an episode that ties into Rebels, Star Wars Rebels, one of my favorite shows. But we finally get to where we needed to be in this story, and it was profound and heartbreaking as well. Really, I think Andor is probably the best political thriller that I've watched, because I don't like political thrillers, honestly. But I think season 2 did for me what everyone else said season 1 was doing for them, which I didn't care for season 1 that much. So season 2, though, a 9.5 rating, one of the best shows in the last several years, and it comes in at number 4 in my top 10. Okay, now we're up to number 3 for 2025, and this also has a 9.5 rating. Yeah, really, numbers 4 and 3 could be a tie for number 3, to be honest with you. But I am going to go ahead and give number 3 to Black Mirror season 7. This is a show that I think most people thought was dead. Like, I don't think anyone expected much out of a season 7. Now, season eight's really going to test my no show is still good in season 8 theory that I came up with for Rick and Morty in my my awards video. Although it's an anthology show, so it's a little different. It could actually still be good in season 8. Anyways, uh, the previous 3 seasons or so just were kind of like, it's fine. I think in season 6, although there was a lot of things I did like in it, they were kind of getting away from what made Black Mirror. Um, and in season 7, not only are they able in some of the episodes to really get back to what makes Black Mirror, they also do other episodes where they are doing something innovative, but it's really good. It's really good. So we've got. I'm gonna try to do the spoiler free. I already did my spoiler thing for Stranger Things, so I don't know if I need to get into spoilers here. The first episode starts off with a very Black Mirror-y episode about a guy whose wife is dying, and he basically sells her soul to the devil, so to speak, the technological devil, to keep her alive, the corporate devil, we should say, to keep her alive with some questionable technology. So that was a very Black Mirror-y episode. We have some really unique ones, like the one with the woman who was stuck in the old the movie, and the Paul Giamatti one when he's looking at all the old photographs, and you can actually go inside of the photographs. And that sort of thing. We even got a sequel to Bandersnatch, which I found to be very interesting. And then we got a sequel. Well, I guess it wasn't a direct sequel. It was kind of a spin-off maybe. But we got a direct sequel to the USS Callister, and first time Black Mirror has done this. And I thought it was fucking phenomenal. Like, I thought that this was the best sequel episode ever. Like, I really feel it was better than the original. Now, this wasn't super Black Mirror-y, but I look at it kind of more along the lines of a kind of a Star Trek tribute, or a Star Trek, I don't know what you want to call it. It's kind of, like Galaxy Quest was. It kind of, to me, is along those lines, but more in a Black Mirror type of way. But I absolutely freaking love it. All the actors are incredible. Was that woman who was in the Penguin last year? she's in the USS Callister. Absolutely phenomenal. I'll probably throw her name up on the screen because I can't think of it right off the top of my head. But absolutely phenomenal episode. And this also could have been the most pleasantly surprising show, honestly, because Black Mirror seemed like it was dead in the water. I didn't think season 6 was terrible, but it just kind of seemed like it was losing its mojo a little bit. And for them to come out with a season like this was quite unexpected, but very, very pleasantly surprised to see how good this was. So Black Mirror season 7 comes in at number 3. All right, now we're up to number 2, and this is, I believe, the first time since 2020 or 2021 where I have given a 10 out of 10 rating to more than one show. Usually only my number 1 gets a 10 out of 10 rating. This time my number 2 and my number 1 get a 10 out of 10 rating, and there's an interesting connection between my numbers 2 and 1, which I can't fully explain until I get to number 1 because I don't want to spoil what number 1 is. But my number 2 is a show I just finished watching not long ago, and that is Pluribus season 1 with a perfect 10 out of 10 rating. This is a show I didn't even know existed until like the day before it started streaming. I was just it came up on my Facebook feed, like, oh, Vince Gilligan's new show, and it described it. And I'm gonna say this even if you haven't seen the show, because I felt this description to be misleading. So it's not really a spoiler, but it described it as following a character, who, who is immune to this virus that makes everyone in the world happy, and are dealing with that. It's not quite the full story though. And this is an alien virus, by the way. So at first glance, it kind of seems like it could just be like a trite old like Invasion of the Body Snatchers sort of deal, but so much more interesting than that, because like I said in Task, it's not always necessarily like straightforward like villains and good guys. I think for me, by the end of it, I'm on Team Carol, just so you know. like, uh, um, but I think the show really does a great job of getting us to look at that other point of view and say, okay, maybe this thing that has happened to the planet, maybe is actually really not that bad. So personally, I never thought that, but I think the show does a good job of like kind of making it a little more complex. Now, the big complaint about the show was how slow it was, but the characters, same thing with Task, except this one has a better finale. The characters, Ray Seahorn, phenomenal performance by her. She carries the show. There's a couple episodes where it's basically just her. There was one episode, episode 7, where it's her and one other character splitting the screen time, and there's barely any dialogue, and the facial acting that she does is just phenomenal. And this show does actually have a satisfying season finale. It closes out the story of the season 1 while setting us up for season 2, which unfortunately we're probably not going to get for like 2 or 3 years or something. That's the thing I just hate about modern television, is we have to wait so fucking long between seasons. But other than that, this was an absolutely phenomenal season. I actually watched it twice, because I watched it when it aired and then rewatched it with my sibling Mark, who was binging it when I was back east visiting them. So watched it twice, and I could watch it a third time. Like, it was just so much there. Like, I noticed things, picked up on things the second time through that I missed the first time. Just an absolute masterpiece. and yeah, another one that has haters, like, oh, it's too slow, and like, yeah, man. With the characters, it's not about the story moving forward. Like, people were approaching it the wrong way. Like, they were like wanted to know all these answers about the origin of this virus, and like, who cares? It has nothing to do with anything. It doesn't have anything to do with the characters. I don't care about that. Yeah, I would much rather have a character heavy show with a slower plot than a very plot heavy show with paper thin characters. And the perfect example of that would be my worst show of the year for 2024, which was another alien related show, which was Three Body Problem, where I thought all the characters were walking and talking plot points, and it was just plot heavy. I would much rather have a character heavy show versus a plot heavy show, by a gazillion times over. So Pluribus, way better than Three Body Problem, but also my second best show of 2025, and could have been the best, except that nothing was ever going to top my number one. And so let's go ahead and tell you what that is right now. All right, now I get to my number one show of the year, and I would just play the theme song for you, except that I don't know why I'm worried about getting dinged. I guess maybe they'll take my video down, which wouldn't be good. But so I'll hum it for you. Okay, enough of that. Severance is easily my number one show, was always going to be my number one show. And the interesting connection between this and Pluribus is that my top two shows, the two shows that I gave 10 out of 10 ratings to, bookended season or 2025 with Apple TV shows. So it's an Apple TV show that started in January of 2025 and another Apple TV show that ended in December of 2025. So 2025, a year bookended by incredible Apple Plus TV shows uh, that end up as my top two. So I found that really interesting. Now, Severance, yet another show that I did not watch first season of when it aired. I heard a lot about it and it sounded like a really interesting show, but I waited on it because everyone was saying like we don't know when season two is going to come. It seems like season two is never going to come out, so I didn't want to be. And I had heard it was a cliffhanger too, so I didn't want to be like in suspense like everybody else. So I was like, well, I'll just wait. So I waited specifically for the announcement of when season two was happening, and then I watched season one right before it. So I just kind of went straight in from season one to season two, and Severance is a generational show. It is a once in a generation show. It is a show that like, I would compare my feelings to it to like Lost when it, in its heyday in Game of Thrones and its heyday. Hopefully, Severance will end better than either of those two shows ended. Still has like at least a couple more seasons, I think. Um, but just the way that it captured my imagination, the way that I was hooked on it, the way that I just wanted to know every little detail about it, looking for every little Easter egg. There's a lot of shows where I watch a lot of YouTube videos where they do a lot of Easter eggs, but this is different. This is like a really into the fan theories and really dive deep into the psychology behind the show and everything. Like I haven't felt this way since Lost or Game of Thrones. So it is like a next level show. There's Lost and Game of Thrones. We're going to throw out the finales. We're talking about their heydays here. there was uh, there's those two shows, and then there's Severance. And Severance has a chance to to close out well. It's got a couple more seasons. There were people who were disappointed in the ending of the season two. I loved it. I loved it personally. Um, uh, there was a very interesting scene in that finale where Adam Scott gets to argue with himself. So I'll just say that was a phenomenal scene. There's I believe I want to say episode 7, which I think it was episode 7. It was sort of a flashback scene, or episode rather. That was a work of art. It was a masterpiece. I think it was probably the best episode of the year from any show. So right at the beginning, to start off 2025, we get this masterpiece of a show, and then we end the year with another masterpiece that's not quite as good, but both of them are on Apple Plus. So that's freaking incredible. Again, gonna have to wait a couple of years. Hopefully, it won't be 3 years like other people had to wait for 3 years for for Severance. Hopefully, it'll be at least only 2 years this time. But I can't wait. Cannot wait for more Severance. This is just an iconic show, a phenomenal show. All I gotta say is me. Like, and it's also a show like my friends actually watched. A lot of times, like at these shows, like my friends aren't watching them, but I actually got to talk and theorize with my actual friends in real life because that doesn't happen. My friends don't watch Star Trek or any of that stuff, so it was really great. So there we have it. That is my number one show for 2025, Severance Season 2. Okay, that's a wrap for this video, and that is a wrap for 2025, and that is a wrap for Alyssa Jean's channel. You may follow me on Facebook. I'll probably post some things every once in a while on there just to keep things fresh, but I will no longer be posting videos on this channel. There's a small chance I could decide a year from now, like I really want to do a top 10, and I could do it, but I wouldn't count on that. So I'm just going to go ahead and say that this is it for my channel. So I just wanted to thank everyone from the bottom of my heart who have supported the channel, who has kept it going. Probably would have stopped it years ago if I didn't have such a devoted following of wonderful people. Um, I really appreciate you all coming to my live streams and participating. Um, I will be moving on to different pastures. We'll say, not necessarily greener, just different color, maybe. I don't know. So appreciate all of you, and thank you so much for watching my top 10 for 2025. Love you all. Goodbye.